Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call this special quorum court meeting to order. The purpose of this meeting is to consider 3 items: the County Equalization Board appointment, the Animal Shelter Appropriation Ordinance, and the County Extension Service Appropriation Ordinance. The prayer and the pledge is going to be taken care of by J.P. Ann Harbison.
All stand, please. Bow our heads. Oh, Lord, give us the guidance to do the county's business. Give us the courage to do what is right. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we call the roll, I would like to let everyone know that our county attorney will not be here tonight. He got called away on National Guard duty due to the 5 military men that were killed. So he is working on some issues with that, so that's why he is not here tonight. Thank you. The next thing we have is the roll call. Carly, would you please call the roll?
Daniel Balls.
Here.
Harvey Bowman.
Here.
Rick Cochran.
Here.
Robert Dennis.
Here.
Lisa Ecke.
Here.
Ann Harbison.
Here.
Sharon Lloyd.
Here.
Tom Lundstrom.
Here.
Eva Madison.
Here.
Sue Madison. Joel Maxwell.
Here.
Joe Patterson.
Here.
Butch Pond.
Here.
Bill Ussery.
Here.
There is a quorum present. Thank you.
Move to adopt the agenda.
Okay, go ahead.
Item 7.1 is actually not properly on our agenda and should be removed. This was the ordinance relating to the extension service that failed to get a simple majority at our quorum court meeting last Thursday. There were only 5 yeses and 9 noes, so it cannot be on a second reading. It's not proper in a motion to reconsider because the person that put it on the agenda did not vote in the majority. So I think that it should be removed from the agenda, and I so move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to remove item number 7. Do I have any discussion about this? Carly, would you call the roll?
Sue Madison. Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Abstain.
Bill Ussery.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Rick Cochran.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Abstain.
Sharon Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Item 7 has been removed from the agenda.
Move to adopt with amendment of removing 7.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Sue Madison. Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Bill Ussery.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Rick Cochran.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
John Furman. Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
The agenda is adopted. The next thing we have before us is the filling of an appointment for the County Equalization Board. The Quorum Court has 2 representatives on the county's Equalization Board, which is Mildred Runkle and Luther Freeman. However, Mr. Freeman has recently resigned from the position. We currently have 2 candidates, J.P. Peters and Jennifer Still, who are interested in being appointed into the position, if it is the desire of the Quorum Court to hear this. Do I have a motion to hear this? I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I think the best way to handle this is to bring up each candidate and let's just to have a... I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ann.
Well, J.P. Peters had asked me if there was a committee that she could serve on in the county, and I said, well, the Equalization Board was open, and so she applied, and she came tonight, and I frankly just told her that I didn't have the votes to get her elected, and so she left.
So do you want to leave her on to be voted on?
Well, I mean, I'm just being honest.
Let's don't do a roll call vote. Let's just say all in favor of Ms. Peters serving on the Equalization Board, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay. Okay, now let's go to Mrs. Steele. All in favor of appointing Mrs. Steele, say yay.
Yay.
Those that do not say nay. Okay, Mrs. Steele will be our new Equalization Board appointee. Thank you guys very much. It was very important that we get this position filled because the Equalization Board starts meeting the 1st of August, and we needed this position. I appreciate your help. The next thing we have is appropriation ordinance, number 6. Mr. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. Item 6 is read as an ordinance appropriating the amount of $10,500 from the general fund to various line items in the animal shelter budget for 2015. Article 1, there is hereby appropriated the amount of $10,500 from the general fund to the following line items in the animal shelter budget for 2015. Animal shelter budget, general supplies, $3,000. Janitorial supplies, $3,000. Medicine and drugs, $3,000. Fuel, oil, and lubricants, $500. Training and education, $1,000, for a total appropriation of $10,500. May I also state that this is on a second reading. It did not pass in the last Quorum Court meeting, but can be passed with a simple majority instead of a two-thirds majority on a third reading. That third reading could take place tonight if the court decides to do so. It would be up to a two-thirds vote to do so, and it could be done and save another meeting. Judge, since we have so many people who are interested and probably here to speak, I would move that we open the floor for discussion by the citizens prior to our discussion.
Okay, is that in the form of a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor of opening the meeting up to the public, say yay. Yay. Opposed? Nay. Okay, the floor will be opened up to the public. Thank you.
Judge, would you mind explaining the procedure for that so we all know?
Okay, we're going to try to do this the way we have done before. Whenever we start, we're going to have a 30-minute comment from the pros, a 30-minute comments from the nays. And then at the very end, after the discussion, then we will have a 15-minute comment, and from each side, a person can be appointed to take the entire 15 minutes, or they can have different people to come forward and speak, and they'll have 3 minutes each from each side, which will be equivalent to 15 minutes. Is that satisfactory to everyone? Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to take this and...
Judge, one question.
Yes.
When is Angela Ledgerwood going to speak on her budget? Is this after the process, after public comment, or before?
George, would you please come to the...
Normally,
Turn your mic on, George.
normally, what you would do would be to, Angela would give her report, and then you all would have your discussion, and then before you vote, then you would have citizens' comments, and that might be better because I think in your discussion and Angela's presentation, there's a lot of myths out there that need to be dispelled, and I think Angela's prepared to address that in her presentation, and so that could maybe hold down on the comments. I know you want to hear from everybody that you can, but some people may be very upset about some things that are not quite accurate.
So we can go ahead and call Angela forward now to do her presentation.
And then you can have citizens' comments after that, or you could do like you normally do, which is y'all have your discussion, and then before you vote. And, of course, this is appropriation ordinance, so you're going to need to suspend the rules too, because you don't normally take citizens' comments on an appropriation ordinance.
Well, they have already passed that to
Right, you did that.
approve
Right.
that, so
Okay.
we're good on that. So I think we're going to go ahead and call Angela forward and let her do her budget presentation. Do I have any questions from any of the court members about this?
Shouldn't we have a motion and a second before we hear from her? Did you make a motion, Rick?
My motion was to allow citizen comment before the vote, but I would also move that we have Angela's presentation prior to the citizen comments.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Proceed, Angela, please.
Okay, thank you all. First of all, I do want to address some of the, clear up a little bit of misunderstanding. I'm here tonight not to discuss a budget cut. I'm here tonight to discuss with you an additional amount of funding that I'm asking for. Okay, so we're not here to discuss budget cuts. We're here to discuss additional funding. Okay, and I want everyone to be fully aware here. The next thing that I would like to go over is, I'm sure the number one question on everyone's mind is, why are you asking for more money? Okay, so let's just start off with that. First of all, of course, budgets across the county were cut last year, and that was everywhere. Okay. Those cuts are not the reason I am actually solely the reason I'm asking for more money. Okay. One thing is I have absorbed a substantial amount of expenditures that I had not budgeted for last year. Okay. This came about after the budget was finalized, but I find myself actually being responsible for those expenditures. So the budget, of course, was cut, but not substantially, okay? In addition to that, I have absorbed janitorial supply costs that I hadn't budgeted for. And in addition to that, our intakes are up, okay? In the first 6 months of 2015, we have taken in and processed 1,340 animals. Okay, so that puts us on track to process 2,680 animals. So that is an increase from last year. It's an increase of 373 animals, I believe. Okay, so all of these things are coupled together to, and that's to cause me to come back and ask you for additional funding. All right. I've laid out for you here. I don't want there to be. I want to be completely transparent here. I have made a lot of cuts. Okay, and if you looked at the proposal that I sent to you, you can see last year we the shelter used $42,804 in janitorial supplies. Now that's a list of a lot of products. Okay, we're not just talking about one or two products. That's an entire department. In the first 6 months of this year, I have spent $10,770.42. Okay, in the last half of the year, I predict that I will spend $9,620.36 for an overall janitorial supply savings of 52%. Okay, so I want you to know we have made cuts. I'm not telling you that we can't look for more cuts. All right, because I think when you say we're done and we're through, I think you've missed the boat. Okay, so we are always looking to fine-tune and to find other ways to manage our money. But in addition to the cuts just to the janitorial supplies, we've also cut approximately $3,000 out of our yearly budget just by reducing the number of vaccines we give to somewhat healthy animals entering the shelter. We changed the dog food brand, and we're saving approximately $720 this year. The cat litter, we pretty much jumped ship and changed over to a completely different product, and that's another savings of about $3,000. So I just want the court to fully understand I am working to make the cuts. I am working to find better and cheaper and more, or I shouldn't say cheaper, because really the products that we're switching to and the savings we're making isn't compromising what we're doing. Okay, but it is more economical, and we've been able to make those cuts. I do still need more money to handle the other 1,300 plus animals that are going to come in this year. Okay, and I have broken it down for you, 31,966.03 is what I believe I can get by through the rest of the year. I understand, I do, that if the money isn't available, it isn't available, okay? If it is not available and a lesser amount is available, we will just have to make a few cuts as to the number of animals that we can take into the shelter. If there is no amount available to us, then we can drastically cut down the number of animals that are coming into the shelter. So I don't want anyone to misunderstand. I've been asked a lot this week, is the shelter shutting down? What are you going to do? Are your employees going to get fired? We're not there. That's not what we're talking about. Those are not factual things, okay? The shelter is still there. The shelter is not out of money. In order to take the additional projected number of animals, which is 1,340, I would just need some additional money, okay? Does anybody have any questions?
Ms. Harbison, J.P. Harbison, you're recognized.
Angela, I think there's one thing that, I think the audience needs to understand, and people on the court, that the $42,000 that was in Ron Wood's budget, that was, you did not budget that in, correct, and you have cut that particular budget 52%.
Correct.
So that's really good, and I think that was an oversight that happened. I understand, and I understand why he really didn't want it in his budget, since it really was, because there's so many supplies for the animal shelter.
Correct.
But, you've done a great job in cutting those supplies, and I congratulate you for doing that. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Madam Judge. I was going to ask you, in 2012 and 2013, you had a janitorial supplies budget.
No.
Well, the budgets I have show that you did. So there weren't expenditures.
Oh, okay.
But you actually had a budget. And I'm trying to figure out why you decided in 2014 not to ask for janitorial supplies. Because for 2014 and the 2015 budget, we didn't get a proposal for janitorial supplies.
Correct. And I'll be honest with you, through the budget process for 2015, I'll be quite honest with you, I really thought Ron would absorb the costs. Okay? It wasn't until after the budget was finalized that some discussion took place that said, wait a minute, these are shelter expenditures. They really should be coming out of the shelter's budget, which I completely agree with the exception of, if I had known about it during budget process, I could have asked you for it. So that's exactly why I didn't ask for it. There is a budget in the line items there, but there were no expenditures there because all the expenditures were made through Ron's budget. But after the budget process was finalized, he came back and said, look, with these cuts, I'm not really going to be able to, he and Jennifer, the lady that works with him, said, these are the actual expenditures of the shelter, and I'm not going to be able to absorb those. We're going to need to work something out. And that's when I took over, and, the decision was made that I would take over the cleaning supplies come January 1.
Well, word to the wise, you hurt yourself when you took it out of your budget between 13 and 14 because it misled us into thinking that those expenses were not needed, and come to find out they were being covered in another budget, and it just caught us by surprise. I'm not saying that that's not something we don't sort through, but when we see budgeted money in 12 and budgeted money in 13, and then you zero it out in 14 and zero it out in 15, and then come back to us in the middle of 15 and say, oh, well, this has been covered by another budget, they're not going to cover it anymore, so I need it. It hurt you that way to do that. So, because I think I was glad to get your memo on Tuesday, but I think it was frustrating to me, not placing blame, just it was frustrating to know that we really did not know the true cost of what the animal shelter was, because all of last year, $42,000 was covered by somebody else. And so then I started looking at the buildings and grounds budget to try to see if, in fact, they had it had been cut by that much. And I don't know all the categories that it came out of, but at least Ron Wood's janitorial supplies budget was only cut $10,000. So that's where I was like, well, how are we getting from 10 to 42? I never could make sense of all the numbers, but I don't think it's fair what happened to you. And I said that before, I know when we were here on one of the other meetings. But I have one other question. So I was provided some information about donations, nonprofit donations to the animal shelter. And if my conversation with the Humane Society folks is correct, I don't think they're doing anything financial for the shelter other than maybe a little bit of assistance with medical rehabilitation.
HSO?
The Humane Society of the Ozarks.
Yeah, they help us with our TNR program.
Okay, right. That's only the TNR program, but that's just they're taking animals, not necessarily providing financial assistance.
Well, what we do is when we take an animal in through the feral cat program, we build them. So they in turn pay us back for the vetting of the animals. That's how that's set up.
Okay. Well, then the Animal League, and I'm a former board member of that, no longer on the board, but the numbers that I got from the Animal League showed that in 2012, from the time the shelter opened to roughly the end of February 14, they gave $44,000 in shelter support dollars to the shelter for the very kind of thing we're talking about tonight. I mean, I think a lot of it was equipment and more capital expenditures, but they were helping with things like dog food and cat litter and some of the supplies. Since February of 14, those donations have gone down to $225. And so I'm curious, it seems like there's some kind of issue with the relationship between organizations, because I'll tell you what, I'll pick on the circuit clerk and the assessor because they're in here back in the back of the room. Nobody really wants to donate money to their offices. You know, it's just not something that you want to do. It's just like come into the assessor's office and put money in their fishbowl. But people want to do that for you. Kids want to have a book sale and raise money for you guys, and that's a good thing. But I know from having set up the Animal League that there's benefits to having that money come through a nonprofit, and somebody emailed me today about this very issue. If you donate directly to the shelter, it goes in the county general fund.
Correct.
It doesn't go to you. And then it's not tax deductible to the donor. If you donate to a nonprofit and designate it as for the Washington County Animal Shelter, you get a tax donation and it goes directly to you.
Right.
So there's a lot of benefits to working with nonprofits, and I'm troubled that it looks like that's not happening anymore.
Well, here's the thing. We actually have several nonprofits that we're working. Well, I don't mean several. We have a couple. Right now, I was just talking with Carmen Nelson yesterday. Matter of fact, as the executive director for the Animal League, I'm assuming I think that's her still her title. And, we were discussing, and she said, look, the Animal League is, and they are providing the transport programs for us. It's not monetary, but they are doing a lot for us in that way. In addition to that, we do hold several events with them. Matter of fact, we're going to hold in October our yearly Ozarks Electric event, in addition to the Subaru event that we do together every year. And she said, transports, events, and then medical rehab are what we're providing to you. And we haven't requested medical rehab from them. We have another nonprofit that we've been working with called Keeley's Fund, and they have a medical rehab for us. So when we have an animal that needs something in addition to what our budget can allow, Keeley's Fund totally picks the profit up.
And the Humane Society does that as well. I think they're doing that with the Fayetteville Animal Shelter.
Okay.
So.
And that's something I can definitely look into, because all the help that we can get obviously is better. So we've also got another new nonprofit that's coming up that we've been in discussion with. There's nothing new, but we're hoping to be able to work with them with a lot of these things too. When I asked Carmen if there, what can we do as far as cleaning supplies, she said, that's your responsibility. She said, but we're here to do the events and the and she offered yesterday, she said, maybe we need to get together and do a big fundraiser. And so I think that these things are definitely in the works.
Well, and let me say this. I'm not suggesting that in all you do already that you also ought to be a development director. That's not what I'm suggesting. You have plenty to do. without having to be a fundraiser. What I'm suggesting is that it's easier for all of these nonprofits to raise money if they see exactly where it's going. If they put up a thing and says, hey, the shelter needs dog food, everybody loves to do that. That's easier for them to raise the money, and then you have gotten the benefit of that without the work.
Sure.
But I think there's sort of a big miss in terms of those dollars. And one of the things I'll just give to you as an example is I'm so glad that we adopted 62 animals out at the Pet Palooza. And to some extent, that was probably because there were no adoption fees associated with that. And you and I have talked before. I'm sort of have moral objections to giving away animals, and I think some of the animal people in the room probably share similar thoughts on that. That there needs to be some kind of financial obligation that goes away with adopting an animal. And one of the things that I think is great is you can give them away, but partner with an agency to sponsor the adoption fees.
Well, now all of our fees were sponsored. See,
They
what
were,
we do
okay.
when yes, they were not just free to say, hey, free.
Okay,
we
that's
actually
news to
had
me.
sponsorship money to cover the cost of those
because
things.
62 animals is almost $4,000
Yeah.
in adoption fees. And I kept thinking, if the adopter sees that somebody's paying for the animal and understands that an animal is a financial obligation, that's great. So
Right.
I just...
Yeah.
Well, I'm
what
glad
we
you
do
did that.
when somebody comes in, now we can't do this obviously with animal control, but we have a large number of surrenders that come in. And when somebody comes and brings an animal and surrenders it to us, the first thing we do is say, do you want to sponsor this animal's adoption fee? Because that will make this animal easier to adopt. We don't mislead people into believing that guarantees the animal will be adopted, because there are no guarantees there. But we definitely do ask people. People will call us up and say, I want to donate something to you. And we say, donate adoption fees. We pick out X number of animals and send us a check for those. We'll put those in their files. And that's how we were able to actually adopt out at no charge. But the money came in, and you don't see it in the month of July because
Right.
the animal may have been sponsored in June when it came in, or in the end of May when it came in, something like that. So, or we may have people who come in and say, I just want to donate to this, and just put it on the 5 animals who've been here the longest, or something like that. And so I know it is misleading when we say it's free adoptions. It is free, but we did collect fees to offset that.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Judge.
J.P. Lundstrom.
Well, as you know, one of my major concerns about the animal shelter for many, many months has been the difficulty in determining what it costs to own and run the thing. Just like this $42,000 we're talking about here tonight that's been out in limbo. We have a budget of $600 and some thousand dollars, I think 630 something. And then on top of that, we have the money that the sheriff spends on running it, providing animal control officers, vehicles, a deputy to come and watch work release people, et cetera, et cetera. So in reality, we're spending around $800,000 a year. And if we do the number of animals that you predicted we were going to do, it's going to cost Washington County taxpayers $298 per animal to run them through that shelter. So I just like for people to have some of these numbers at hand so they know what it's actually costing us. We've had great difficulty just determining what it cost us. I was just looking at some of your figures here on this MWI veterinary supply company. You're buying a detergent from them called Excel concentrate, and the invoice here shows $151.56 unit cost. On your sheet, you have $166.34.
Added tax.
Okay. What I want to know is, what is the disinfectant property of that detergent?
What do you mean the disinfectant property?
Is it a quat, a phenolic?
No, it's a hydrogen-based product. Dr. Conley?
Yeah,
Where are you?
peroxide, superhydrogen.
What is the dilution ratio on it?
Depends on the organism that you want to kill. It's 116 for ringworm, it's 132 for parvo or panleuk. And then you can use less solutions in areas.
Excuse me, speaker, please.
Yeah, we need to.
Doctor, come up to the, if you would like to just pull up an extra chair there and join.
Well, she's already answered my question pretty much, but I would like to know.
She might have another one.
Yeah, well, since she's there, I will ask her because she may know more about what I'm referring to than Angela may. But would you have an objection to using a dimethyl ammonium chloride product, a quat?
Yes, I would, because the Axel actually is the best product out there for killing the extenuated calicivirus, which can wipe out a cat population. Parvo, it's the best thing on the market. It only has a 5-minute contact time, and then all you have to do is rinse it. It also works in the presence of organic matter, which is a huge problem for us with the staff that we have to use for cleaning. It's a constant training progress, in progress all the time, getting people to pick up the organic debris as thoroughly as they need to. And most products are not going to be effective against that. So Axel is the one thing that we try to use in the areas where we feel that there could be parvovirus, panleukopenia, which can spread through and wipe out populations. Ringworm is another thing that we have to we would slamp every animal that comes in, but you could still miss it. It could be on one hair, and those hairs can be aerosolized and then spread. So in those areas, you really need to use the Axel. You can use bleach. It's a lot more abrasive to human noses and to bothering people, and it does not work at all in organic debris. So if something, serum, nasal discharge, whatever, doesn't get wiped up properly, it's not going to work. So considering some of the challenges that we have to deal with in this particular shelter, Axel is the best bang for your buck.
Well, the reason I ask this question is we manufacture these detergents, my family does.
Yeah.
And we sell thousands of gallons of quats to the food processing industry every month. We're feeding this stuff to humans, that it's disinfecting. It is recognized, a quat-based detergent, by the EPA as a broad-spectrum disinfectant.
Yes.
I was going to offer to donate her 3 5-gallon buckets.
Yes.
But if it's not worthy of doing what you want to do, I would withdraw that. But this is costing you $33.26 a gallon. The quat-based product I'm talking about dilutes at 1/2 ounce per gallon, which means that a gallon of concentrate makes 256 gallons of broad-spectrum disinfectant detergent.
Yeah.
So, as far as I know, it's effective against every organism, microorganism except tuberculosis. This is what the EPA tells us. And you have to get certified to make these things. Not every Tom, Dick, and Quang can make them. So, anyway, we sell these products.
I can address that if you don't mind.
Pardon?
I mean, I've read extensive research papers and been to probably 4 shelter-based conferences recently, and the ROCAL, which is what it's called in the veterinary field, that's the quaternary pneumonians, they do have parvo listed on their label, but it is only 80% effective. So,
well, there are several different grades of
when you actually
quaternary.
go in and do research on it, they have found that the ROCAL is not, it's a very nice smelling, and in a lot of instances you could use it in areas where we have already known the animal's been there for 2 weeks, it's past that quarantine period. We don't hold animals for 2 weeks, but it takes 2 weeks for parvo to show. It depends on the age of the animal. And so in those areas, I would suppose ROCAL could be used. But if we ever have a parvo outbreak, panleuk outbreak, ringworm outbreak, we have to switch to the Axel.
Well, I don't know what ROCAL, who makes ROCAL, but all disinfectant detergents, and particularly in quats, are made with different generations of quats. You get one from one company, it may not be as effective as the quat made by another company. We try to use the very latest generation made so we get the maximum kill for the dollar. But anyway, I'm just trying to help her get some ideas of where some money can be saved. This would have saved you $500 on this one product. So anyway, I appreciate your information on the stuff. But there are $155 a bucket is a lot of money for a bucket of soap. It's $33.26 a gallon.
It is expensive.
With tax.
It does
and the
save in
dilution ratio is not all that great either, based
Yeah.
on what you were telling me. So
It does save in water usage, which doesn't show on our budget, but you would use a lot less water. That would be more in the general budget, I guess.
well, that's another. Who pays for the utilities over there? Does Ron pay for those? Or?
Ron pays for the utility, to my understanding. Let me say it that way. To my
See,
understanding.
that's another
Ron pays
expense
the
that we don't
utilities
know
for
what it's
all.
costing.
Well, he pays for all
I know he
utilities
does,
for-
and then he charges
for
it back to
everybody.
the different departments and so forth.
I mean, he's not just paying for mine, he's paying the utilities for all county buildings.
Well, I understand that, but it's still, the utilities still make it cost more to run
Sure.
the shelter. So I'm still trying to figure out what it costs us per year to run that shelter. So maybe one of these days I'll get it figured out. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Any other discussion? Okay. Mr. Dennis?
Thank you, Madam Judge. On the grant, I guess I'll direct it to Angela. On the grant from PetSmart, is that something we could reconsider and try to get back?
Well,
Didn't we give
PetSmart
it up?
Charities, PetSmart Charities gives away $30+ million a year to animal organizations. You don't have to be a part of their rescue wagon program in order to apply for their grants. As a matter of fact, I've got one coming up that's opening in August that will continue with our TNR grant. Okay, it's a trap, neuter, release, and community cat grant, and it's open not just to rescue wagon participants. When we were a rescue wagon participant, it was just much easier to get the funding because we were a part of their organization already, so they were doling that out. And this year, when I apply for it, which I plan to as soon as it opens up, I will be able to, I'll be competing with everybody who wants it. So, unfortunately, there's no way to get back on the rescue wagon program short of them changing their contracts up, but we are still able to apply for their grants. And I've been online doing some research to see what applies to us, because not all grants apply to government entities. Some grants apply to 501c3s, and some apply to private organizations, things like that. So, I mean, the ones that we are available for, we're definitely going to see what we can do and apply for them.
Okay.
Because we want to continue that, obviously.
Of course.
Free money's free money.
I'd like to get that other one back too, but thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think you've done a great job explaining why the budget fell short. I think you did a wonderful job. I know that we said to Mr. Wood that if he needed money to come back to the court and we would grant him money because we took money from his budget. This would be almost equal to Mr. Wood coming back to us and saying, hey, I budgeted wrong and I need some of that money back. So you're just saying it for him instead of, you're saying it for Mr. Wood almost, that you need more money. And is $32,000 the amount that you need for the rest of the year?
Yes, sir.
Judge, is there any way we could amend the ordinance to read $32,000 instead of $10,000 and put this baby to bed?
Please keep your applause down, because if we get started, and may keep your voices down because it'll be all night, because we've got a lot of things going on here. I appreciate your enthusiasm and thank you for being here. Thank you guys very much. I've got a couple of other, George, is there any way this,
It has to go back on first reading, Judge.
you have to go back on the first?
I'm just going to go back on first reading it.
So if we wanted to do that, George, how would we do it then?
Well, you could amend it, just take a majority to amend the ordinance, but then you're back on first reading.
Yeah, it actually has, Judge, it has, we have to move to put it back on first reading for purposes of amendment. That, we'd vote on that, then we'd vote on an amendment.
Wouldn't it be better to just have to put it back on First Amendment? It would make it shorter than this. I know everybody's wondering what the dog food is for. That's because we're having a special meeting, and you have to pay me an extra $100 to come. Well, I went and spent the $100 that you were going to pay me for coming for this meeting to buy pet food for you. And I think that, just nothing else, just to show you that I'm in support of you. Farmington's in support of you. I talked to the mayor, and he said it's a much-needed service for Farmington, and he wanted to pass on that he couldn't make it tonight, but he was for supporting the pet shelter as well because we use it so much. And so if it's possible, I would rather amend this to read $32,000 that we give you, and we change the ordinance to $32,000 instead of the 10, and then that way we can give her the amount that she needs, and maybe we can even, if everybody's for that, maybe we can pass it and have more readings tonight than just one.
George, can they amend?
So can I?
They can amend this
The-
motion and have it still on the second reading?
Well, I think it would be on first reading.
We'll have to take it back, okay. Ms. J.P. Dennis?
But if not, we have to give her 10,000 now, go through the same process again a month or so later and give her another 10, and then the same process again another month later and another 10. And, I know the folks don't want to come back up here again. I don't want to see us have to have a special meeting for any of this. I want it to be able to be conducted in quorum court meetings without having special or special meetings and paying extra money. That's $1,500 that we could have put on this. And so I amend it. If it doesn't pass, so be it. But I amend that we change the amount to $32,000.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to place this back on the first reading, changing the amount of money to, is it 31? 32,000. 32,000. I have a motion. I have a second. Was that you, J.P. Hahn? Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? J.P. Bowman.
First thing I want to say is, Angela, I really appreciate this update. I really think had we had all this information to begin with, we probably wouldn't have been having this discussion tonight. The fact that there was $42,000 spent last year on that sanitation products out of Ron's budget, and you've done that for $10,000 for the first half this year, is really commendable. And I really do appreciate the additional things that you've done to bring that to us. Practically every meeting we have, I'm asking our departments for more efficiency in what they're doing, to look at ways to improve situations. And one of the things that I talk to numerous people in the courthouse, business people out here, and rarely do I ever find people who understand that this court has spent $12.4 million the last 5 years, more than we've taken in. We've had the bridge problem, we've got road problems, we've got lawsuits coming at us, we've got tons of expenses. Our reserves have been dramatically reduced. Our previous treasurer tells us we need $15 million in reserve to be sure we make it through tough times. And guys, we're down to next to nothing. We're down very, very low. And I think it's really, really important that all these folks that love dogs and cats, I do too, there's no problem with that. And I'm not voting against the shelter. I'm not voting against dogs and cats. I want us to have the service out there that's needed for this county, and I applaud what you're doing. But everybody in this room needs to know that, guys, we've got to tighten our belts. We don't have any surplus. We have got to continue to look for ways to save some money. We've got to keep this county on a sound financial basis, or we're in big trouble. So all I'm asking you to do is understand these votes are not against the shelter. It's a move to dramatically try to reduce our cost in this courthouse, that we can continue to go on as a healthy county. So just please be aware of all those things, and I think some of those emails that I got threatening me about running again would go away. And by the way, I want to tell you, if you want my job, please apply for it next year. I wouldn't mind at all if you were having to make these tough decisions. Thank you.
J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Judge. I'm trying to think how I'm going to phrase this question. We spoke earlier about how you work with nonprofit organizations to raise money for additional things that you need. And one of the issues or concerns that you have is the way they tend to dictate what the money is going to be used for. And sometimes grants do that. They're very specific on how you're going to appropriate their money because it is their money. And in our discussion earlier, I said, why don't you put a list together of these are the things that we need and submit it to various nonprofits and see what they can do for you. And work together saying, okay, if you're going to give me whatever, and you're going to give me what I want, at least they will know, yes, I can meet these 3 items on your list. We can meet these 3 items on your list. And guess what? 100% of your list was met by different nonprofit organizations. Is that feasible?
Absolutely.
We can do that then.
We can do that.
That's great, because if to everybody sitting out there and to all the wonderful people that sent me those emails, I don't have an incinerator in my backyard. I really don't. And I have a dog and I have a cat. Well, I had one. They're with Jesus now. But anyway, we have to use common sense. And I want to ditto what J.P. Bowman said. If we have money in the bank to spend, we can spend it. But if we don't have it, how can we spend it? And I love the commercial that says, money don't spend itself, you know. But we want to do everything we can to help you. And I want to applaud you on your presentation and being prepared for this. So good job, Angela. Thank you, Madam Judge.
Thank you, Madam Judge. I wanted to speak to J.P. Dennis's motion. I have sort of mixed feelings about it, so I'm just going to go ahead and say sort of what I've been thinking about. I've really been frustrated all week with the conflict between my animal-loving tendencies and my fiscal responsibilities, and I've heard from people who've called me names and accused me also of killing animals, and I just looked at my 3 rescue cats and dog and felt assured that wasn't true. But it's been a hard week, I think, for a lot of us. The misinformation that's out there has been significant. I'm so glad that you corrected it. I really appreciate that y'all took the initiative there because it's been hard for some of us. And I think what struck me most about this week was nobody was trying to build consensus. Nobody was trying to bridge the divide that's really split this court over this issue, that's very damaging to this court. And so I've spent a lot of time the past 2 days trying to come up with a way to build that consensus and take the yes votes and the no votes and try to bring them together and please everybody, the people that don't want to spend any money, the people that want to give every dollar we have to the animal shelter, and bridge all of that. And when I got your memo that sort of said we really need about $32,000, I was with you on almost all of it. I still have a problem with the gasoline because I don't think that's an emergency, and this court had previously said we didn't want you to buy a car. I'm also not sure how training is an emergency. The rest of it, though, I got the rest of it. You outlined, that you need it to repair a piece of equipment. But what I had a hard time doing was just giving you all of it. And the reason I had that problem was because it's that what J.P. Bowman was speaking to, that we've got to have those reserves. You just happen to kind of be the first one, you in the Extension Service. And someone who contacted me about this issue used the phrase minimum liquidity, which I thought was very good. What's the minimum liquidity that we need to feel good about whether the county is prepared for the risks and challenges that we face? And that's how much money do we need in the bank? And if every little bit that we appropriate like this chips away at that and makes me less secure, it makes me feel less secure. So what I did was I came up with sort of a proposal that would give you the $10,000 that the majority of the court had voted to give you, because I felt like with the readings, that was going to be the wishes of the majority of the court. We should give you $10,000 out of the general fund, out of the unappropriated reserves. The next 10,000, though, what I thought was that we needed to sort of bridge the divide a little bit better and match that with some cuts somewhere. For the third $10,000, it was my nonprofit involvement that I felt like we ought to try harder there. And much like J.P. Dennis did, I have a check written for $200 to the Animal League to be designated for the county shelter for my attendance fee tonight. And I think everyone on this court should do something like that, because this meeting, our fee for being here is costing the county $3,000, and that's a joke in this situation, because that $3,000 could go to the animal shelter. But I guess I just want a tax deduction. So anyway, so I sort of felt like if there was a way to make this work with getting 10, cutting 10, and giving it to you, and then trying to make up the rest in some donations to get us through the year. We're not there yet. So I actually have an amended ordinance I'll circulate, and I'm going to support J.P. Dennis's motion because I'm going to support a different kind of amendment. So you all can look at my cuts and start criticizing me. I made them up today. I had to come up with them somewhere. I tried to cut a little. I was a little irritated that you're having to bear all of the burden of what's coming out of Ron Wood's budget. So he's taken a little bit of a hit, not as much, but a little bit. But I don't think that if we're talking truly about the lives of animals, that we ought to be talking about travel expenses and things like that for conferences and stuff in other departments. We ought to be putting it where we need it. So I'll pass this around, and everybody can look at what I've proposed and vote on it, I guess, when it's appropriate.
J.P. Dennis.
She answered the question.
J.P. Bowman.
Guys, I think it was very obvious from some of the other earlier comments that the Animal Defense League and Animal League had contributed about $40,000 in years past to the shelter through the tile program and the brick program and the fence and other fundraising events they did. And I'm, number one, I'm disappointed that they're still not engaged like they were. And I'd like to know why they're not engaged and what we've got to do to get that to happen again. Can anybody tell me about that? I know Carmen is supposed to be here tonight, and she's been involved. I'd like for her to tell us sometime before the meeting's over, discussion time or whatever. But I want to say one other thing to Angela. Angela, I think that the reports you give us about the animals, the number you take in, personality characteristics of the creatures and all that kind of stuff, and health issues are far less important to us than the kind of stuff you've given us tonight. And I hope in the future that you'll bring this kind of stuff to us of what you're doing to minimize costs, and the programs you're looking at and so forth, I think will be far more helpful to us in making financial decisions than the characteristics of the characters you're dealing with out there. So I want to thank you again for the cuts, and I hope you'll continue to look that away. But I sure would like to hear some information.
Well, I'm going to have to call for a point of order right now because it's not time to call someone up from the audience to
That's
talk.
fine.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
J.B. Pond.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Angela, if I wanted to make a contribution to the animal shelter, and I know it goes through the general fund first, how would I make out that check?
Well, if you brought a check to the Washington County Animal Shelter, made out to Washington County Animal Shelter, we would take that, we would write you a receipt, and we would deposit it into general fund.
Okay, just Washington County Animal Shelter.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And it does go to the general fund.
It does go to the general fund, that's correct.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Any other discussion? J.P. Harbison.
I appreciate everybody's concerns about our low carryover. But we have a situation here where the animal shelters, there was a mistake made in the budget, and we need to correct that. And we need to address the cuts that we're going to do later and I've got some other things, but I don't want to start that discussion at this meeting. At this meeting, we need to decide how much money that we're going to be able to give Angela. And J.P. Dennis has a motion on the floor of $32,000 with a second. Okay, I'm going to call the question.
Once we call the question, we have to take it to the...
Point of information, that's not the motion that's on the floor. The motion on the floor is to put it on first reading.
Oh, yeah.
Just to be clear.
Okay, but to put it on first reading was the amendment of the $32,000.
Just a motion to put it on first reading. You don't...
We have to...
Purposes of
Okay, I'm going to... He's amended it. Okay. George, you're the parliamentary tonight, so tell us.
So
Not officially.
you made a motion to amend
Yes.
the $30,000, right?
Right.
Seconded?
No, the motion as stated was procedurally you have to put it back on first reading for purposes of amendment and then amend. That's what my Roberts rule says. That's what the AAC manual says.
I think once it's amended, this is the first reading. But that's not necessarily a parliamentary question. But I just want to be sure that there was a motion to amend and that is seconded, because that amendment needs to be voted on.
When the judge restated the motion, she said it was a motion to put it back on first reading. So that's what I understood the motion was. So.
All I heard was I thought it was a motion.
Hang on, just, J.P. Dennis, what did you understand your motion was?
I wanted to do it correctly, but what I want is $32,000 to replace the $10,000. So I want $32,000 to be on the ordinance that we give her the $32,000. I don't know if it needs to be first reading or amend this one. I don't understand that part of it. So I know what I want. I want her to get the $32,000 as soon as possible. Rather than coming back and doing this 3 times.
Yeah, go ahead.
When we amended it, that automatically put it on first reading. That was automatic. So the amendment automatically put it on first reading.
I accept that.
Okay, so it's on first reading.
Okay, but I've got J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. I would ask Angela for the breakdown on the items between general supplies, janitorial, medicine, fuel, and training, so that we know what the amounts are there to make a proper ordinance. You gave a total amount, but I didn't see in your document here how much was for each one.
I'm not sure. It's the page that says line. I don't know what number it is for you, but
Okay.
it's in the packet that Karen sent you.
Okay.
And it should be page 3 of the packet Karen sent you. So line item 2001 would be $10,844.31. 2003 would be $8,192.82. 2004 would be $11,428.90. 2007 would be $500. Line item 3101 would be $1,000.
But that doesn't total $32,000.
That totals $31,966.03.
Okay.
I rounded up.
Okay. All right.
George, and are we okay on the amend the motion?
Would you mind restating it? There was a motion to amend it to $32,000 and place it back on first reading.
If we have to take it back to the first reading, I think what we need to do is, we've got a motion and a second to take it back to the first reading. Let's go ahead and vote on that.
With it being amended.
With it being amended, yes. Do we need to put the amount of money on there to amend it now? Okay, and that's $31,900, $32,000. Okay, Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Sue Madison? Joel Maxwell? No. Joe Patterson? Butch Pond.
Yes.
Bill Ussery. Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
No.
Rick Cochran.
No.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
No.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd.
No.
Tom Lundstrom.
No.
Eva Madison.
The motion to put it back has failed. So now, do we go back to the second reading of the 10,000? Yes, go ahead, Eva.
I'd like to make a motion to put it back on first reading for purposes of my amendment that I circulated.
I have a motion and a second to put it back on second reading. Did you say first?
It's first reading for purposes of 6.1 amended that everybody has a copy of.
No.
Here, she can have, I've got some extras.
I haven't seen it.
Did it get a second? It did, yeah, at least a second.
Good. So we have a motion. Do we have a second on this?
Justice Ecke seconded it.
Did you make a second on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now we're open for discussion on this ordinance, on this amendment. J.P. Harbison.
All right, this cuts the total to from 31,900 and whatever to 20,000. I'm going to vote for this because we need to appropriate some money tonight, and it's more than the 10,000. I'm not happy with it, but I can live with it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? J.P. Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Judge. Just want to say, coming back to you for a moment, thank you for, you've done a lot of diligent cost management, and I think that's very commendable, what we like to see. I also think that you're doing a good job of managing the shelter just in general. And for anybody that hasn't, I got a guided tour today of the animal shelter, so maybe you could charge for those, and we'll invite these folks to join you, and we could solve part of this problem. But I will say I appreciate you taking time, not just for that and to answer the questions, but for what you've presented for us that we got earlier this week, because I think that really helps clear up a lot. But I want to just make sure I understand and clarify what it seems like came out of that report, and that is that it seems like the real issue for you, and you've been put in a very unfair situation or a very difficult situation, where it almost seems like you got a double cut. You did what most departments did last year and cut your budget by about $35,000 at the request of the Quorum Court because everybody was having to tighten their belt. And it appears to me from first glance that you've managed that $35,000 cut pretty well. But then you had an additional cut of $42,800 that come around from the side door, if you will. And so I think the concept that we're looking at, if I understand that to be the correct issue, it really then is, I think, where the conflict is coming from, is because there's two different agendas. One is how do we take good care of the animal shelter and the animals, and the other is how do we be fiscally responsible. And hopefully there's a way to do that where we're not dipping into the general reserves and putting that reserve at risk, but we're also not putting you in an unfair position as well. And I think that's where some of the angst is coming from. So it seems to me like that the real solution or the real problem stems back from the fact that $42,800 was pulled from your budget. And thankfully, because you're a student management, you're not asking for that full $42,800 back. It's more along the lines of $31,960 to be exact. So 32, thank you. And I'm glad we can have a pleasant conversation about an unpleasant, difficult process. I think that's very healthy. But I would just say it seems like the easy solution for this, maybe go back to where the problem started and not ask us to generate funds out of the general reserve because, and I think everybody understands this, but the Quorum Court is in exactly the same position you are. We're being asked to do more with less. And then, unfortunately, we just happen to be the chain of command that's now in charge of helping you to find ways to do more with less. And so I think we understand each other really well. and we're really fighting the same battles just at two different levels. So I appreciate very much what you've done, and I would just suggest this may not be the time to make this amendment, but I think there's a way that we can get this money for you that you need to truly do a good job, but it doesn't necessarily have to come out of the general reserves. Thank you, Madam Chair.
J.P. Usry.
I'd like to say that I think what we've seen happen here is the whole process. I think everybody's come out. It's not been pleasant, not been easy, but you have a whole lot of supporters you wouldn't have had 3 weeks ago. And because of this, I think it's caused all of us to take a hard look at, it's caused us to take a hard look at how we manage and how we ask the people actually to manage who are supposed to manage, and how we guide them and do our job and help you do your job. And I appreciate very much all that you've done on this. And I think that by a compromise here, I think that we're all going to come out and hopefully we'll all be able to make this work and it'll be better for everybody. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I would really like to encourage the relationship with the nonprofits. So that way maybe we can make up the, the $13,000 that we need. And maybe we can go that way and then you'll be fully funded. I'm encouraged, and I will support the $20,000 amendment that Ms. Madison is proposing. And once again, I'm proud of you, Angela. You've done a great job in answering this court's questions, and you're to be commended. So let's see if we can work with the nonprofits to make up the rest. See if we can do that.
J.P. Harbison.
I'm sorry, but I only read that your budget had been cut $10,000 and that we were appropriating $20,000. This ordinance is very inappropriate. It's cutting we're going to other departments. We're cutting building and grounds, $2,500, small equipment, $500, janitorial, $2,500. We're cutting the county judge's budget, common carrier, $750. We're cutting grant administrator, fuel and oil, $1,500. We're cutting the controller, general supplies, $500 for meals and lodging, $500 for training and education. Human resources is general supplies, $500, and $750 for a reduction of $10,000 from other departments. This is not acceptable. This is not a compromise. This is a slap in the face. I'm sorry. That is ridiculous. And now I'm going to start on something else. I wasn't going to start tonight on this, but I am now. We've got problems with the budget. We've got a jail that we've already given $800,000 to. We gave $1,300,000, $1,300,000 in 14. We gave $1,800,000 in 12, and in 11 was $1,100,000. We've got a problem. We've got big issues, a lot more issues than $30,000. This is ridiculous. Now, and I love Tim Helder. He's done a wonderful job. He's managing well. But we're not looking at the real ticket items of where the money in the county is really going. This elephant has been in the room for about 4 years, and no one's addressed it. And I am going to address it. If we cannot provide $30,000 for Angela's budget, then we are not doing our duty as county quorum court members. Thank you. And I'm not finished. We've got a jail committee that needs to get on the ball and get busy. Thank you.
Any other discussion? J.P. Dennis.
By me making the motion for the $32,000, you know that I'm for it. I'm not going to vote for this one because I thought the $32,000 was the right thing, and so I don't understand where everybody's came from, because you showed where the budget pitfalls were or the changes were, And I thought this would have been over by now and would have been headed home with $32,000 in your fund. So I'm disappointed in it. I don't understand it. Maybe there's some things I don't know, and then anybody can educate me as they go along. But I don't understand where this came from. So when I vote no for this, it's not that I don't want you to have the money. It's I don't like this.
J.P. Pond.
Is there anyone from these departments where these cuts are going to be made here to speak and give us a report whether they're going to be able to operate efficiently without the money?
I don't think anyone was prepared for this, so I don't think anyone is ready to comment on this because this was taking everyone by surprise.
Judge,
Jackie
I would like to move the ordinance, the original ordinance for the $10,000 for tonight on second meeting. But we amended it and then that failed. We haven't voted on yours? Oh, 20. Oh, this one's on the table. All right.
So you'd have to take care of this before you make another motion.
Well, you know, I understand why John Furman resigned.
J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. I call for a question on 6.1 amended.
I have a motion and a second to call for the question. Carly.
Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell.
Yes.
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
No.
Bill Ussery.
No.
Daniel Balls.
No.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Rick Cochran.
No.
Robert Dennis.
No.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
No.
Sharon Lloyd.
No.
Tom Lundstrom.
No.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
What's the count on that?
It's 7-5. It failed.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't. It was the vote.
We were just voting on calling the question, so now that means discussion can continue. That's all we voted on.
Any other discussion?
Judge, could we hear from some of the people here tonight before we go ahead and vote on this again?
Well, I guess if you guys want to make a motion to hear from the public now.
I'll make a motion, we hear from the public now.
Second.
Do we have a motion on the floor now that we can just do this? I think we've got a motion on the floor that we have to vote on, don't we, George?
Eva's got a motion on the floor, right?
So we need to vote on this first?
Yes.
You need to vote on her motion.
And you called for questions, so we're supposed to vote on them.
Madam Judge.
Call the roll, Carly.
Madam Judge, may I have just a little bit more explanation on J.P. Madison's presentation on the 6.1 amendment so I can understand it a little bit better?
I think
may
no
I?
one knows it except J.P. Madison because she knows she brought it tonight. No one had seen it.
May I ask for an explanation, though, from her?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Judge.
Thank you. It was just an attempt at a compromise. I did my best today to find areas in the budget where I thought that the sacrifice of animals took precedence. And if there are cuts people disagree with, we can work them out later, because isn't that the whole point of all of this, is that we're working out budget issues as we go. I just felt better about bridging the divide, the deep divide in this court, by making up for the additions to the budget with some revenue neutralization. Not all of it. Just it's a blending of all the proposals. It's not giving them everything and hoping they can rely on some nonprofits, because that seems to be a missing component of what's been happening at the shelter for the past couple years. Part of it is just giving them what's actually in the original ordinance. The second component is some cuts, and I tried to be very mild in those cuts. I didn't take away anybody's entire budget. I looked at things and thought, is it more important for a county employee to drive a vehicle home every day? Or is it more important for us to have the supplies we need at the animal shelter? So everybody, you can disagree with them all you want, but this is what budget is about. It's about making hard decisions. And what I regretted the most about this was how divided we were and how negative the debate had become. And I was trying to figure out a way to bring all that together. Give the shelter the money that they need, and that I think they've demonstrated, at least in part, that they do need. Give it to them. But I don't want somebody going on a travel, some travel that requires airfare for some conference if Angela needs cleaning supplies. That was my goal. And that's the things I looked at. I also did take some from buildings and grounds, because if you look at the cuts that were made to the buildings and grounds budget last year, it's not what Angela's being asked to endure as a result of their cuts. She got hit with a $42,000 cut, but they didn't have that much of a cut in their budget. So they need to take a little bit of that heat. So it's not perfect, guys. It's the only compromise that we've had. We need somebody to step forward with a compromise. That's what people were begging for all week, was some way to give the shelter some money, but to make everybody happy, and I tried to do that. It's not perfect. Yell at me if you want to, because you don't like that somebody had their mileage taken away. We do need to talk about the jail. There are big issues here. But I am seriously conflicted on this one, because I worked hard to get the budget under control and to build those reserves, but I also think that the shelter deserves some money. We can either be behind that, or we can put this on third reading and come back on Monday, because that's probably what's going to happen. If we pass it tonight, if we pass something tonight, we save $3,000 from not having to meet on Monday. That is tremendous. Right there, it's tremendous. But there's no $32,000 is not passing this court. And unless everybody's changed their mind, I don't think the 10 is. And even if the 10 were to pass, she's coming back in 2 months for more.
So what was wrong with 32?
Yeah.
It's not enough.
I think the miss in the 32 is the miss from going from $44,000 in donations to $225 in donations. And I also think that I don't agree that gasoline and training is an emergency that warranted 2 special meetings. There's parts of it that I had a hard time getting to. So if somebody else has a compromise, please propose it. Mine's not perfect. I get it. I'm trying to get something that gets them some money so that we're not back here on Monday. Thank you, Madam Judge.
J.P. Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Judge. A couple of things. One is, I think the danger here is, if we all hold out for everything we absolutely want, none of us are going to go home with some of what we want. And sorry to echo your comments, I don't agree with everything that's structured, but I also know that a compromise like this has some traction and some ability. So for me personally, the difference between this and the $32,000 is where it comes from and how it works. And we can't kid ourselves. Whatever money comes out of the general reserves is money that would have gone to building and grounds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not like we have this separate money that's protected. So if we take it out now with an amendment, that's one thing. Or if it's just not there when these people come to us and ask for the same kind of important needs like Miss Angela is coming to us as well, then it's not going to be there. But the effect is still taking those monies away from those departments. So we don't have extra money that we can make up the difference. So we're really not talking about, I know these cuts are coming from specific things, but whatever money we appropriate to this is eventually coming from these same kind of things at some way or another. Maybe at a different quorum court meeting or whatever, but it's still coming from the same purse. And that just leaves less for anything else. So because of that, while I may not agree with everything that's done here and the way it's done and all that, I will say that I think this compromise probably has a better chance of passing so that you're not back here doing this again. We're not wasting Quorum Court money, and we can all be sensible and get some of what we want, maybe not everything we want, and make the best of a very difficult situation. Thank you, Madam Judge.
J.B. Harbison.
All right, I'm going to make an amendment to 6.1. I'm going to amend it to an ordinance appropriating the amount of $20,000 from the general fund to various line items in the animal shelter. Article 1, there is hereby appropriated the amount of $20,000 from the general fund to the following line items in the animal shelters budget for 2015. General supplies, 7, janitorial, 6,000, medicine and drugs, 7,000.
Point of information or point of order, I'm not sure what it is. 6.1 isn't actually on the floor. It's just a motion to put it on first reading. Put the 6.1.
Well, I'm amending it. I have a right to amend it.
I don't know if a motion to put on first reading is.
It was a motion to pass.
No, it was a motion to go to first meeting.
And put it on first reading, is what I recall.
Right, but I still think we need, the motion is just to put it back on first reading. That's what the AAC manual says. So I didn't think there was anything to amend, but. I think this should be taken.
All right.
There's nothing to read until your amendment.
Right, okay.
All right, so I'm going to continue with my amendment because I think it's in order. All right, with total appropriation, okay, I don't like this taking out fuel, oil, and lubricants. We can agree or disagree whether they need a car or not. They need a vehicle to pick up supplies. Training and education is important. If we don't have training and education for our health, then we get behind on new laws and new techniques, which increases the efficiency of the animal shelter. And I'm going to strike Article 2, all of Article 2. I think it's unfair to reduce other budgets at this time. If we need to reduce other budgets, we need to do it when that department heads here and say, you know, we need some cuts. We're going to have to do more cuts. All of these departments reduced their budgets by thousands of dollars. We reduced this budget by $4 million last year. So coming back and starting to reduce because we're going to neutralize what's going into the animal shelter, it's not fair to the other departments because they have needs also. So I'm going to amend this. I think this is a compromise, and we'll see where it goes. Thank you.
J.P. Ussery.
I agree that we need to compromise, but I'm not going to vote to remove something from somebody's budget who is not here, who's not been in the discussion. I don't think that's the right way to go about that. If we had talked to these people previously and they had agreed to it, education may not be as important, but sometimes those guys go to a conference, they come back with an idea that will save the county $20,000 or $30,000. I mean, we've got to take this one thing at a time, and right now we're working on this particular project. I think to add a lot of other things into it, I think that muddies the water way too much. And so I could not vote for this the way it is. Thank you.
J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. Angela, on the training and education line item that you asked money for, is that is, I believe, money for our veterinarian for training, ongoing training in their profession?
That's correct.
Correct. So it's not really a new school. It's staying current on veterinarian practices.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I want to back up just a moment here, if I will. When the original ordinance came through the Finance Committee, and this is for all you people who came here, the original ordinance that was requesting $35,500 was brought to the Finance Committee, and it came to a vote of 3 for and 3 against. As chair, I had to make the decision, yes or no. At that time, I felt like that because that night was when I first learned that Angela had been hit with this little bogey of about $40,000 worth of supplies that was not in her budget that she didn't know about. I voted no, and I immediately came back with the original 6.1 for $10,500, which would give her a month and a half to 2 months to get there to where we could come back, not have to have a special meeting, and decide, how we want to proceed with the remaining 30,000, the remainder of the 30,000 you need, whether it come from another department budget, that it should have been slid over or whatever. So that's how we got 6.1. So you understand that. That did not pass in our quorum court meeting the other night, last Thursday night, just on its own. I wish it had, because we wouldn't be spending $3,000 tonight to talk about what are we going to do. I really would like to see 6.1 pass to take the pressure off the shelter, and at our committee meetings work with Angela on how we're going to get there. I know that we've already done a lot of that work tonight that we would have done before, but I won't support the 6.1 amended for various reasons. Thank you, Judge.
Any other discussion? I'm sorry, J.P. Madison.
On the training question, one of the things that also factored in to my thought process was you've got a $1,000 budget for airfare. You already have $1,000 for training. It's not like you don't have any training. You have $1,000 budgeted for airfare, $1,000 for meals and lodging, $500 for travel, and $200 for mileage. So because part of what you asked for was $250 for airfare.
For this new conference.
Have you spent all your airfare budget on airfare already? Because it struck me that you had other line items that would suit those needs. So that's why I looked on it with some skepticism, just to give a little bit more explanation there.
Well, I can give you that information. I don't have a copy of my budget in front of me, but I can get you that information. But the whole purpose in this $1,000 was we can do early registration, which would save us money in the long run. And this is a conference that is specific to sheltering. It's not just a conference, Dr. Conley is required to have continuing education every year, 21 hours. This is specific to sheltering needs. And honestly, to be quite honest with you, we've been able to make several cuts and make several changes based on some of the conferences she has gone to that are shelter specific. So this was just to get an early registration, to spend a little less money. Is it an emergency? Absolutely not. It'll just cost. I put it in here so that we could save a little bit of money. That's the whole purpose for it being in there.
And the only reason I put that out there is that was some of the logic, and not thinking that one, and not saying it was an emergency, and two, thinking that you had $3,700 in your budget for those very expenses already. So that's why I was really kind of struggling with it. So I just put that out there. Thank you.
Yes, J.P. Lundstrom.
This is getting very confusing. J.P. Harbison made a motion, and a second wasn't called for, and I haven't heard one yet. So
it died for lack of a second. It died for lack of a second.
Oh, I never heard one called for.
No, I don't think it was called for. So
I'm just trying to get things cleaned up so we can move on with this meeting in an orderly fashion. Thank you.
You made a motion.
No one seconded it. So.
I didn't hear a call for a second. If I may, Madam Judge, I wasn't recognized.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Let's just get some clarification here. 6.1 is asking for $10,500, correct? 6.1 amended is offering $20,000 to the budget out of reserves into the animal shelter. Angela's asking for 31. No?
Not out of reserves.
Not out, out of the general fund.
It's out of those funds.
Out
Half
of
of it.
additional line items from other budgets.
Okay, so the 10.5 is, and then the additional 10 would be from budget cuts from others.
That no one has seen.
Okay. I don't like being blindsided, so I don't want to blindside any department heads in cutting their budgets without even considering or sending them the memo and them being out of the communication on this, but is there a way we can get 20,000 from general to the animal shelter and try and raise the other? Can we do that and amend, what is it, 6.1 to read 20,000 instead of 10.5?
There's general revenue that you can take it from, or
Unappropriated general
yes,
revenues.
Yes.
Unless
Okay.
somebody else can educate me on this, is that the only place that we can take this money from?
Yes.
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 Would $20,000 get you through the year if we could get fundraise the rest?
Yes. It doesn't matter what amount you appropriate. I will get through the end of the year.
You're a champion.
We will just we'll just have to make cuts as far as the animals coming in.
But to
there's no
continue
reason in the
operations.
world- there's no reason in the world that we can't try to. The first order of business as soon as I return to my office will be to reach out to these nonprofits and say, what can you help me with? Like
Give
I
them a
said,
list of
Carmen,
what you need.
Yes, absolutely. And Carmen and I talked yesterday, and that's the first thing she said. Well, maybe we need to get together and do a fundraiser. So I believe that's doable. I very much
Okay.
believe that's doable.
Judge, I'd like to make a motion on amending the amount of 6.1 from 10,500 to 20,000 out of general funds.
Okay, but now we've got a motion on the floor. Ann Harbison has made a motion to amend this.
6.1. Okay,
So-
are you going back to the original motion,
I'm going back to 6.1,
not amended? Just
amended to 20,000.
to 20,000. Has to go to the first reading.
Then it has to go back to first. Then it has to go back to first reading. Correct, Judge?
Yes, you will have to, if you're going to make another amendment, you're going to have to place this back on the first reading, and that will have to be approved by the.
So any amendment is going to have to go back to first
Yes,
reading.
Yes.
And we can do all three readings to get a resolution tonight by suspending the rules. Correct?
Yes.
Or,
Ms. Harbor.
or if something gets 10 on first reading, it passes. Done. That's the other option.
Okay.
So do you want to make a motion? Is that what you
I
want?
thought there was a motion on the floor already.
It died from lack of second.
I make a motion to amend 6.1 to $20,000 from general reserve.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Judge P. Pond?
Yes, ma'am. Did we not have Eva's amended motion on the floor? Did we ever vote yes or no on that?
That's what I was thinking. That's not. Now, you can amend, you can make a motion to amend her ordinance. We're getting in a confusing area here.
George, why don't you come over here and sit by Marilyn?
George, you can even take, if you would like, George, why don't you take right up here one of these seats and talk on the mic there?
Okay.
You can just have one seat.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Back to my question, maybe I still got the floor, I'm not
You've
sure.
still got the floor, yes.
Do we need to vote up or down on Eva's amendment that she's,
I think, we did have a motion on the floor, and that was seconded, wasn't it, Eva? And so, now, your motion was to amend the original 6.1, which is probably not in order. I mean, really, what your motion should be to amend Eva's, amended, just to read exactly as you said. And we would vote on your amendment first.
And so you've made that, okay. Any discussion on
Yes.
J.P. Eckes?
It will be 6.1 amended.
Okay, George, explain exactly what they're doing.
Okay. They are voting on an amendment to Eva's motion, Eva's ordinance. There was a motion, she made a motion to pass.
My motion is to put it back on first reading for purposes of the amendment That's the procedure.
Yeah, the problem I have with this, there's nothing to put back on first reading until at least you've made a motion to introduce, there's been a motion a second to pass your ordinance.
Well,
Normally,
we did the same on J.P. Dennis's
well,
motion, so.
normally, my opinion had always been, if you amended something substantially, like change the amount, and this, then you're automatically back on first reading. Now, I know you said the AAC manual says separately, but it seems like there were some AG opinions that back that up. You're automatically back on first reading.
Just figure out a way that we can vote, okay?
Okay, figure out a way y'all can vote. Why don't we do this? All right. First of all, do you want to vote a straight up or down vote on your ordinance first?
I don't care. I just want us to be able to vote, figure
Okay.
out a procedural way for us to vote, so.
If you will then withdraw your motion, let her motion, or agree that her motion will take her motion to amend take precedence
That's
over your
fine.
motion.
Fine, but we can vote on J.P. Ecky's
Right.
$20,000 and
There you
see
go.
what happens.
There you go.
Out of the general fund. Okay. Any other discussion?
Yes, ma'am. Just for clarification, before we do a vote on J.P. Ecky's motion, I'd like to have somebody do a reading on it, maybe, what we're exactly what we're voting for. Thank you.
J.P. Ecky, will you please? Thank you.
Mr. Cochran, would you like to read 6.1 with 20,000?
The question of the 20,000 dispensing it between supplies and drugs and fuel, or how are you wishing to spread your 20,000 amongst these supply line items?
I'm going to go with 6 and 6, and then leave that there.
Equal percentage.
Equal percentage? No, we only need 1,000 for training and 500 for lubricants.
Okay,
So the rest will be divided by the
leaves you
general supplies,
18,500.
janitorials, and medicines.
Okay, so it'd be 6333. That'd be correct, and 6334, 18. Nope, that's too much.
Let's just
Okay.
give general supplies
60
500 less,
six-
and then you can just round it off from there.
So you're saying 6,500, 7,000. Ooh, no. 500 more? Is that what you're wanting?
No, less. I mean, just get general supplies 500 less than you would janitorial supplies and medicines and drugs.
Okay. Well, if I do 6,500 and then 500 less on that, it gives me 20,500.
We'll take $500 off.
Okay, so, all right, so the highest would be janitorial, 6,500, 6,000 for general supplies, 6,000 for medicine, drugs, 500 fuel, 1,000 training. Is that
Ask
what you want?
Angela if that would work for her.
Angela?
She knows her budget better.
6, that'll work?
What would work best?
Does that work?
That's fine. If you
Okay.
take 500 out of general supplies, 500 out of janitorial, 500 out of medicine, but 500 back in fuel, 1,000 back in training, that will give us what we need.
Okay, so 6,000 in general, 6,500 janitorial, 6,000 medicine and drugs,
That'll be fine.
500 and 1,000.
That'll be fine.
That comes up to 20,000. Okay. An ordinance appropriating the amount of $20,000 from the general fund to various line items in the animal shelter budget for 2015. Article 1, there is hereby appropriated the amount of $20,000 from the general fund to the following line items in the animal shelter budget for 2015. General supplies, $6,000. Janitorial supplies, $6,500. Medicine and drugs, $6,000. Fuel, oil, and lubricants, $500. Training and education, $1,000, for a total appropriation of $20,000. Thank you, Judge.
Now you're back on first reading. There needs to be a motion and a second and a discussion.
I move that we adopt 6.1.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance as amended. Any other discussion? Are we ready for roll call?
Now, do you want to have, now would be the time, before you vote?
We
you
have a
need to
chance for the public comment
you need-
now.
If you want public comment, now would be
Yes,
the time.
I want public comment. So if you guys will vacate the seats so that people can come forward and visit with us. Stay close, we may need you.
Judge, could we have a 3-minute recess?
Yes, we can. Let's have I think that's a good idea. 3-minute break. People that are for this, against this, or just if we just have individuals that would like to be recognized and with a 3-minute presentation. Yes, pros and cons back and forth. So let's just do it that way, pros and cons, and when you come to the well, you have 3 minutes. So let's do the people that are for first. Yeah. Please identify yourself. Huh? Yeah, please time it. Please.
I'm LaJoyce Duncan. I'm a resident of rural Washington County, and I want to say what a good job Angela has done. We have adopted 2 dogs in the past 6 months. We have received great reception down there, and I challenged everybody on Facebook yesterday, and I'll challenge the public and anyone else in Washington County to make a donation to this cause. I took stuff that was donated from the Farmers Co-op yesterday, some food, and we took some Purex and some cat food and some dog food. So I challenge people to take it down there to them. And I know there's some of you that are not for this, and I think you think it's your way or no way, but we need to stand for the people of Washington County, and especially what we get in the rural, some of the dogs and cats that are dropped off to us. We need help, and I think Angela needs it, and she's a great person. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judge, if I may, please?
Yes.
Would you please remind the public not to make personal attacks on any JP feeling that it's our way or the highway or this way or no way, but just to address the issues, please? Thank you.
Okay, I think you all heard that, and I will support that. So thank you.
J.P. Pond.
J.P. Pond.
Yes, ma'am. And would you ask them, when somebody gets through speaking, for the people that agree with the speaker, just raise your hand so we can see who all agrees, because clapping takes up a whole bunch more time than we can not want to be. You probably won't want to be here all night. Thank you.
Thank you, J.P. Pond. Please have a seat and identify yourself. You got 3 minutes.
My name is Doris Forsheimer. I'm a resident of Washington County. I've been involved in shelters and foster parenting for the last 20 years, from Texas to Arizona and back. I think it's just incredible that you would build this beautiful shelter and then not have the money for it. And it's kind of beyond stupid, actually. And, you know, this is my first ever anything like this. So I'm really taken aback that you sit here and squabble for hours over $10,000 or 20 or 30. Granted, you need to have corporate sponsorship and step in and, like this lady, take donations. You need to find a way to come up with this money. That's all I've got to say. I've got bottle babies to go home and feed. I hope y'all aren't here all night, because I thought I was going to be.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Okay, now, these people that have spoke for the issue, do I have someone that wants to speak against it? Please identify yourself, sir.
My name is Mike Landry. I am a Washington County resident, and I'd like to follow up a bit on J.P. Madison's and other people have talked about nonprofit organizations. Whatever you do tonight, $10,000, $50,000, this problem is not going to go away. And it's going to come back next year and the year after. And I think the solution, and I think probably everyone in this room would agree, nonprofit organizations are the place to go. However, and J.P. Madison probably can correct me if I'm wrong, different organizations have different missions, different agendas, things they are doing. My suggestion would be to start a nonprofit organization that would be something like the Friends of the Washington County Animal Shelter, where you can then focus the fundraising. Butch can write his check there and he can get his tax deduction instead of it going into the general fund. You can market it from that standpoint. You can get sponsorships that are directly related to what goes on at the Washington County Animal Shelter from a marketing standpoint, from a positioning standpoint, and then the money and the resources all can be devoted specifically to that. And that way there is an identification of what that nonprofit organization does, and that is to take care of the Washington County Shelter.
J.B. Pond, did you have a comment?
Yes, because there may be some difference in opinion on this, but a few minutes ago I wrote a check to the Washington County Animal Shelter, gave it to the Quorum Court Secretary, and I do intend to get a receipt for that, and it will be tax deductible.
Now, does that go into the county general fund or to a general fund for the shelter?
Well, it goes into the general fund, but the money that the shelter receives comes from the general fund, and by my putting in there, it's a compromise. We've got people here concerned about the general fund on this horseshoe, and we have people concerned about the animal shelter.
But I guess what I'm saying is if you have a focus where money, corporate sponsorships, those sorts of things are addressed directly to the animal shelter, then there's no confusion about it.
Yes, sir, like Mr. Dennis, just buy them a sack of dog food.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Hang on just, I think Ms. Madison wants to, J.P. Madison wants to ask you something.
Mr. Landry, no question, that was actually the intent when the Animal League of Washington County was formed.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Okay, thank you.
They've just not been able to help for reasons I don't fully know.
Well, there might be something to be said about a name that reflects the Washington County Animal Shelter.
Well, the Friend, it actually, I think it's incorporated as Friends, but because of the similarity in the name between that and the Friends of the Fayetteville Animal Shelter, it was too confusing, and the professionals recommended that we adopt a DBA name to try to distinguish ourselves, because it is all about marketing.
Yes.
Your time's up. I appreciate your comments. Cheryl, you've got all of you raise your hands in favor of what this gentleman said. Okay, Cheryl?
I thought you were going to say in favor of Cheryl coming up here and talking. I was just going to clear up one thing. The reason the money goes into county general because in county government, the revenue is by fund. The expenditures are by departments. So we'll go into county general, but if you write a check like Mr. Pond did, J.P. Pond, what happens to that money, he'll get the receipt. The money goes into county general. We will bring that back as a donation to the animal shelter, and Angela can ask for that to be put in whichever line item she needs at the time. The problem with some of the grants and things, like you say, it's restricted to whatever they think you need. With the money that's donated directly to county general or directly to Angela to the animal shelter, she can actually put that in the line items where she needs it, for training, for food, for medical supplies, whatever they do. I just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Come and identify yourself.
I'm Judy Bond. I'm a resident of Washington County, and I work with New England Brittany Rescue and Texas Springer Spaniel Rescue. So I get dogs all the time from the shelters, and we get them placed. And it's wonderful. What we're trying to do here is to make sure that our shelter is funded and that it does well. I adopted a dog the other day from there. Didn't need him, but he's in my house. I should have walked through the kennel. But the donation of dog food that people are talking about, well, we'll just take a sack of food. Dogs need to eat a certain diet all the time. If you mix the foods up, you're going to get digestive problems. So we need to find out from the shelter exactly what brand they need before somebody goes buys a sack of Old Roy off the the rack and says, "Oh, I donated a sack of food." Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Anyone else? All raise your hands. Appreciate her. Okay.
Hi.
Identify yourself, please.
I'm Kathleen Lehman. I'm a resident of Washington County, and there's a couple of points that I just kind of wanted to reiterate. Someone made an estimate that it was about $200 per animal that came through the shelter, and I certainly know that I can easily spend that in one vet visit for one of my cats. So I think that's awesome if they can take an animal from coming in to making it adoptable in $200. So that's fantastic work. I also know that the emergency fund, or the reserve, I guess the reserve fund, does have enough to cover this. So I would ask that the members do cover this. On the point that education may be not critical, it absolutely is. When you go to a physical face-to-face conference, you make the network that then they can call on to make the improvement. Someone was saying it makes them more efficient, and absolutely. So I think that's a critical point, and not to discount the education. And my last point is that a lot of people have said that they're very proud of the work that Angela has done already. So I would ask that if you have said that you are proud, great, she's done her part. I would ask that you all do your part to vote for giving her money this evening. And as public, we're doing our part by being here tonight. So we're asking for your part as well. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Judge J.P. Bonham.
If Carmen Nelson's still here, I'd sure like to hear from her about the situation with nonprofits and why there's not the same level of participation that we've had before.
Please identify yourself.
Carmen Nelson, Director of Animal League of Washington County. One reason why the support you're not seeing on our P&L for the shelter this year is mainly because the money that we raised initially was to get the shelter open. There were particular needs that the shelter needed, including outdoor kennel runs that was just never put in their budget. So we raised the money. We did phase 1 and phase 2, costing us around $10,000. There was money that the surgery clinic needed. We donated around $7,000 initially when the shelter opened for that equipment. The following year, there was more equipment that the shelter needed, so we wrote a grant for $15,000 and donated that for clinic equipment. So right now, we're doing more in our rescue transport program, in which Angela will reach out to me, or I'll go visit the shelter, and we'll pull animals that we have working relationships with, mainly in Colorado. So that does not require a lot of expenses on our end. We sometimes have to board the animals, which can be expensive. We normally move them right into foster homes until they go on their transport. So we have helped in medical rehab with heartworm treatment. Dog had full hip surgery. So there are things that we've done, and I actually personally have sponsored numerous animals, so we haven't run the money through the Animal League, so we just wrote it off on our personal taxes, and that was a very large amount. So you're not going to see on our P&L that we donate a lot, but we have in the way of rescue transport. You know, if we can keep the numbers down at the shelter, we've saved animals. So whenever she's in a tight squeeze and needs help, we come in and we pull what we can. So.
Carmen, I would like to personally thank you guys for your transporting, because you were there when we first started, and you've been there when we've run out of other, and I just wanted to let you know how much we appreciate that, and our dogs appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. It's our pleasure. Any other questions?
I want to know about the brick program and the tile program.
Okay.
What's happened to that?
Okay, sure. When the shelter first opened, we came up with a couple different fundraisers. One was the wall tile project. So we had 8x8 photo tiles that individuals could purchase for $200, and we have those hung in the entryway of the shelter. So I don't know any of you that have seen it. And that was originally going to be an ongoing fundraiser, but we did the first entryway wall, and then the project was halted, and we're just waiting for that to be restarted at whatever time that we can. With the brick project, we have 4x8 mortar bricks that we have people can purchase for $75, and those are engraved. It can be in memory of or in honor of a pet or loved one. And those eventually we're going to do a dedication wall in front of the shelter. So we have quite a few bricks right now on hand, and it's just a matter of getting with Ron Wood and seeing when we're going to get that wall started, and we'll build it with the engraved bricks and blank bricks that people can purchase their bricks, and we'll have quite a few engraved at one time. But yes, certainly if we could get the wall tile project back in motion, we could raise even more. So,
What's required to get that program back in order?
approval from you all, I guess. So.
No, it'd be approval from me.
From
because
Judge
I'm in
Edwards.
charge of the buildings.
Okay.
Yes.
So.
J.P. Ecke.
Then, Madam Judge, the tile program, I'm just kind of like confused. It's kind of like it went both of the ways at the same time. So we, the Quorum Court, do not approve that tile.
We originally came up with that before the shelter opened to help raise funds, and
I saw that wild tile. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yes.
I mean, it's just beautiful.
Yes.
I didn't know that that's what that was when you go in to it.
All those tiles, people donated $200 per tile for that. And that money went towards the original budgets for getting the shelter what they needed. It went towards fencing, which was around $10,000. So it obviously didn't raise all the money for all the money that we spent, but it was a way that community got real involved and excited about being able to do something for the shelter and also showcase their pets. So
Okay. And so it's not a Quorum Court decision. It is department head?
It's my decision
Oh, it's
because
your
I'm in
decision.
charge of all the buildings in Washington County.
Oh, okay. And do you like the program? Did
There's
we all
other
just kind of thought it was so pretty.
situations that, like I
Okay.
say, yeah, there's other situations. Thank you, Carmen.
Okay, thank you.
But is it something that we can possibly think about or discuss later?
Not right now. Like I say, the
Okay.
tiles weigh a lot when you put a whole wall full of tiles. The weight of them is quite heavy.
Okay.
Well, Judge,
Can we have a discussion on it later, perhaps?
We'll see.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, come forward, please.
I've got a little friend with me.
I want him. I take him home with me. Please identify yourself, ma'am.
Carol Hunter, and this is Joey. I got him at the animal shelter, Washington County Animal Shelter, 2 years ago. He started out as a foster. In 3 months, he worked himself up to a service dog. All on his own, what he knew, what he instinctively knew that I needed. You going to talk? and he, if they happen to not take as many animals, they may overlook a little dog or a big dog that can step up and take the position that he has done with me. He's become a sensory dog. He senses when my medication doesn't work, and he's an arthritis dog. He picks things up for me all the time, pills or whatever I drop. So he's an awesome little thing, but if they have to not take as many animals, somebody's going to be overlooked, and they might get hit by a car or have a problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What are you going to say? Yep.
Okay, anyone else? Identify yourself, Mike.
My name's Mike Emery. I'm a resident of Washington County, and I'm also a former staff member at the animal shelter. Just wanted to commend the staff out there because I know they're going to get by with whatever budget that comes through on them because I know they're masters at making every penny count and making it stretch. So they should be proud of what they've done, and I know they're proud of what they've done. Everyone else should be as proud of that as well. I would just have one comment based on, I had a lot more to say, but the discussions tonight kind of ruled some of that out. So mine is the donations that come into the shelter, the financial donations going into the general fund. I would like to see them go into a fund that Angela can use at the discretion instead of having to come back here every time and ask for permission. You know, that's like, you know, going to mom and dad every week to get your allowance money. I made my bed, Mom, can I have my $10? You know, this money is coming from people who made, you know, are giving of their hard-earned money thinking it's going specifically to the animals. And going into the general fund, there's a lot of misconception that, you know, Angela and the shelter will not see a penny of that. So, but if it's going to them where they can use it as a discretionary fund or like a petty cash fund or something, that's a lot easier for them to get access to. I think that would make a huge difference on the budget problems and public perception as a whole.
J.P. Pond?
You might have misunderstood what she said, but I believe when Ms. Bollinger came up and spoke, she explained that that's exactly how it is. When you write a check to the county for the animal shelter, it has to go through the general fund, but it goes to Angela to be spent how she determines.
Yeah, but she still has to come back and ask for that to be put into a line item. Yeah, couldn't it be done as just a discretionary fund that, like an automatic deposit that she can go and pull?
When we're doing a budget, that's money that comes out of the general fund that was not donated. It's tax money, and that's put in line items. There's two different things.
I do know that the Fayetteville Animal Shelter uses a process where all of their donations automatically are used at the discretion of the shelter.
Well,
I know it's a different government body. I get that, but it's a model that could be used.
Donations, they do that way. But the tax money for the budget is a separate kind of a deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Please identify you. No.
Sorry. My name is Paul Warren, and to be fair, I'm the veterinarian's husband. And as someone who understands budgets, I want to make real clear, and I'll just use extremes to do it. If someone came in and donated $500,000 to the shelter today, would that enhance the budget that they already have of $600,000 or $700,000, I understand, and then it can be used over the next 10 years? Or does it offset the budget? So really her budget would drop to $100,000 and she'd get a $500,000 donation. That covers, is a donation an offset to the current budget, or is it an addition to the current budget? I think that's the confusion.
It wouldn't lower their budget at all. A donation, well, if a donation came in, it wouldn't affect their budget. But the difficulty is, the comptroller knows well these realities. That money, by legislative requirement, legislative audit, has to go in the general fund. But if someone gave the county $500,000 dedicated to the animal shelter with that string attached, you just have to come to the court to appropriate it. What Mr. Emery speaks to with the city, I don't know of any way the county can do that. But there's no, I don't think anybody on this court would have an intention to take a donation that the public made to the shelter and not give it to the shelter. But there's just this little accounting thing of it having to go through the general fund first. So she doesn't have to come beg, though, for her own donations.
If that $500,000 was given to Carmen, would it all go to the shelter based on the director's request, or does Carmen make this?
It would be up to Angela what she did.
She would ask you for that money, and so that would be the way to do it.
Thank you, sir. Please identify yourself.
My name is Tammy Cagle, and I'm a new resident of Washington County, an ex-loudmouth Texan. I just moved here from Texas. I wanted to give a quote that says, "The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way how it treats its animals," per Gandhi. I think that's very important for us all here. That's why everybody here, when you say, what's the positives, you get all these hands, and cons, you get none. There's a reason we all came here. We want the money for this shelter. We want them to have what they need. I mean, she gave you the budget. So what she's going to do now is she's going to go beg, borrow, steal, whatever to get her deficit of $10K. Okay? That puts her in a hard position. We're all here saying we want this. I don't know how the current Arkansas County government's work. But I know I buy a lot of bonds of streets and schools and everything else. What can we do? You talk about a wall that's got glass bricks. I've seen many schools in Texas. They're always short on money if you watch the news on Texas. And they put bricks and say, you can buy one, and they go sell one to every one of their grandparents. There are ways, but we've got to help her. We can't put this on this one lady. So you guys, they keep a Facebook page. You know, it's a lot of work. And all these pictures you see get adopted every weekend. So I think as a quorum court, you've got to get more involved and say, we're going to help you, not just we're going to cut your numbers. They need help. They got 4 or 5 people sitting here. It takes a village. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, please.
As a Texas girl, 4-H'er, we love our animals. But I want to assure everybody out there that several of us spend a lot of times with Angela going through the shelter, trying to gain an understanding for one purpose, and that is to make the shelter of Washington County the best shelter. You all don't know what we do on the background. I mean, we're quiet. We're not going to let anybody know that we're doing this because we want Angela to succeed. We want her to show everybody that she's capable and she's doing a good job, and she is, and you all see that. But there's several of us that go and spend time trying to help and to make Washington County, all departments, better. But we also have a responsibility, and this is the High Wire Act, that we don't have a net. And that's the issue. We do not have a safety net if we were to get slammed with a tornado. We don't have a safety net if we were to get slammed with floods or an earthquake or anything. And that is what our concern is with the money. Believe me, there's a lot of bleeding hearts here that would love to just give her the money. But if you don't have it, you don't have it. And that's why we're asking the nonprofits to work together and to be interdependent as a community. That's the best way you can succeed, because independently you won't. You won't work together. So understand, we're not the bad guys here. We're not. We're the person on that High Wire Act. And you all are going, ooh, are they going to fall or not, you know? But, they're going to be reelected or not, I should say. But just understand that every one of us, want Washington County to be the best county in the state, head and shoulders above everybody else. And the only way we can do that is if we work together, any way we can. And we're open to suggestions, okay? And I thank you very much, and I appreciate you and your comments. Anybody want to wave at that?
You know, the gentleman came forward and made the comment about the $500,000 contribution. Guys, I think this is extremely obvious that the way these kind of contributions need to be made is through the 501c3 organizations like ADL and like Animal League. And guys, we had a very effective program working there, and it's been minimized. We must maximize the benefit of the nonprofits like that for the shelter. And nobody on this court wants to touch that money. We endorse and encourage you to use nonprofits to cover them up with all kinds of funds for sanitation, for runs, for equipment, for travel, or whatever they need. You love your animals, and there's no better place to go than to go through a nonprofit and give that directly to them so that those monies can be directly applied to their needs. And with a group of people like we've got here tonight and the enthusiasm and passion you've shown, it'll be no problem. We won't have to worry about what's going on with the animal shelter because they'll be covered up. So please follow up and consider trying to maximize the benefit of these nonprofits. Thank you.
Do I have anyone else? Because I'm going to take one more person. We need to go ahead. Come on, ma'am. I think I've got a couple here. So please identify yourself.
Donna Bloyd, and I've been a volunteer at the shelter since 2012.
Go ahead and sit down.
I'm still trying to figure out how Angela could be short-sighted on her budget, and we have that half amount. I understand the troubles. and tribulations that you all face, but as a tax-paying citizen, I want the animals looked out for. I pay taxes. I want them to get their fair share. I have seen lots of bad things in counties that do not have adequate or even any animal control, any animal shelter. And, I did volunteer for 4 years, and it's pitiful. It's pitiful. And right now we're known for one of the best shelters that around. And it's because of the hardworking staff, a core group of volunteers that work very hard to support Angela and that staff. And when we talk about education and training, and I'm trying not to trail too far, but I think as professionals, we all know how important that is. And to see that degraded into that it's not an important item, it was explained it was an important item. And for the very reasons, I ask for your support for this animal shelter. I will continue to support it until the numbers of the animals that we're unable to accept are not let through the door and they're euthanized. And I cannot handle that. And neither can a lot of other volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, thank you, folks, very much for your comments. I appreciate you coming, and we'll go ahead and move on. I think we've got a vote on the floor, so I think we'll go ahead and move forward because I think a lot of people would like to go home. We got a motion. We've got a second. We've had discussion. Carly? Do we need to explain what we're voting on again? I'm sorry. Yes, would you please?
Thank you, Judge. An ordinance appropriating the amount of $20,000 from the general fund to various line items in the animal shelter budget for 2015. Article 1, there is hereby appropriated the amount of $20,000 from the general fund to the following line items in the animal shelter budget for 2015. General supplies, $6,000. Janitorial supplies, $6,500. Medicine and drugs, $6,000. Fuel, oil, and lubricants, $500. Training and education, $1,000, for a total appropriation of $20,000. Thank you, Judge.
Okay. You're recognized.
Okay, I just want to be sure this is for the balance of the year, that this is not going to be a 1 month, 2 month, 3 month thing, but this is for the balance of the year.
I don't think she can tell you that because she was asking for 32 to try to get by. So like I say, she can speak for herself. Angela? I don't want to lock her in because I'm not sure she can live with that.
I can live with that. Here's what we will do. We will take and do what Ms. Ecke has, J.P. Ecke has suggested. We will work with the nonprofits. We will work with other people who perhaps will come together and raise the rest of the money. If the money isn't raised, I won't come back and ask you for more. We'll just live within the budget that is allowed. So to answer your question, I will make do with the $20,000 that we're talking about right here. Okay.
J.P. Maxwell.
Thank you, Angela, and thank you, Madam Judge. I just want to make sure that we clarify one thing here, and that is that there are a couple of questions going on. I wish it was as simple as, does the animal shelter need money or not, and is there money in the reserves or not? Unfortunately, it isn't that simple. If it was, it would be a very open-shut question. We have to decide as a quorum court, not just about animals, but about emergency services, jail, sheriff, et cetera. We have a lot of things. And so I just hope that you will understand that we are considering a lot of things in the mix of this. And I will say that I have not heard anyone say that the animal shelter is not run well, and I commend you again, Angela, for an excellent job, both in budget and in management of the shelter. I've heard no one say that they're opposed to funding the animal shelter. I've listened very carefully and haven't heard that. What I do hear is some conflict about where that money should come from, and I think that's going to be the secondary question that's hovering in everybody's mind tonight, not just the question of should this be funded, but where it be funded, and I think that's very critical. Thank you, Madam Judge.
Okay. Carly, would you call roll, please?
Sue Madison, Joel Maxwell,
Joe Patterson, Butch Pond,
Yes.
Bill Ussery,
Yes.
Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman,
Yes.
Rick Cochran,
No.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke, Ann Harbison,
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd,
No.
Tom Lundstrom,
No.
Eva Madison,
Did you get a count, Ann? And
7-4-5.
so it passed. No, it didn't pass.
Okay, just a minute.
Okay, so, there, yeah. Two.
I'm going to make a motion that, and this has to be.
Wait.
I'm going to make a motion that we suspend the rules and read this by title only for the second and third time. We'll have to do it second. But to suspend the rules, we will have to have a 2/3 vote. And what I'm going to ask is those people that voted against it go on and vote to suspend the rules so we do not have to come back for another meeting and spend another $3,000.
Madam Judge, point of order, it only got 7. It didn't get enough to go to a second reading. It has
Well,
to
it
get
did
8.
too. It's a majority.
No, it needs, an ordinance
it's
needs
appropriation
a
ordinance.
majority.
It had to be 8. Yeah, it's appropriation order.
All right, then I will suspend the,
Go to second reading because it didn't get 8.
It has to be 8. So this is dead. So,
I can't believe that this court would do that.
so this has.
Rick's got his hand up.
Yes, Rick.
Thank you, Judge. Judge, I would move that we go back to the original words of Ordinance 6.1, where we're asking for $10,500. The reason why is because I think there is a certain reluctance by the JPs to arbitrarily move the offset to someone else's budget. That was my thinking when I made this ordinance originally, because it didn't even pass in committee. That gives Angela the money to get us going for another couple months. It'll be tight for a couple months. That will allow us to go back and decide as a group without extra meetings to do this in our regular meetings. And so I would move the original 6.1.
Well, I'm going to second it.
I have a motion on the floor to go back to the original motion. We have a second.
Yes, it would.
So
Second reading.
be second. Excuse me. Would be this one.
No, we have to do the.
We have to vote to. We have to.
We have to do that before we suspend the rules.
Carly, would you call the roll to see if you want to take it to the second reading?
Second reading, or are we voting on it? Because that's two different things. If you just are putting it on second reading, you don't have to vote.
It automatically goes to second.
This is the second reading.
This is a second. It automatically goes to second reading.
Move it to third reading. Are you asking, do we have a motion to suspend the rules and move it to second reading by title only?
You don't have to.
This is
already on.
They're correct. This
Okay.
is second reading.
All right.
Yeah, okay, we'll move it to third reading, suspend the rules and read for the third reading by title only.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Okay. Karen, pardon? Let's do a roll call.
They
Okay.
voted on it to be the third.
Okay, whatever. This is,
Suspend the rules, place it on the third reading title only.
Third reading.
But this is for the 10,500.
Yes, back to the original.
Take 2/3.
what?
Takes 2/3 to suspend the rules and move it up to.
Yeah, it does.
Carly?
Sue Madison, Joel Maxwell, Joe Patterson, Butch Pond, Bill Ussery, Daniel Balls, Harvey Bowman, Rick Cochran, Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke, Ann Harbison,
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd,
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom, Eva Madison,
Now read it for the third time.
Judge, may I?
Yes,
By
please.
title only. An ordinance appropriating the amount of $10,500 from the general fund to various line items in the animal shelter budget for 2015. Thank you, Judge.
Judge, may I?
Yes, please.
I took a back seat on my 6.1 amended, and I'd like to move to amend, because I think it gives them 20. It gives them $20,000. We don't have to do this stopgap measure, and I worked hard on it, and that's what I'd like to do. So I'd like to put it back on first reading for purposes of amendment to make it 6.1. If that fails, then we vote on what this is. So there's an amendment to that effect.
Fails for like a second, Judge.
Okay.
No.
So we're ready to vote on the...
Fails for a lack of, her motion fails for a lack of a second.
So we're ready to go back to the original and vote on... Pardon?
We need order. We need order.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's try to be quiet. We're going to wind up here in just a few minutes, and I appreciate your patience.
No.
Got to read it.
Got to read it.
Yes, would you please?
Okay, thank you, Judge. An ordinance appropriating the amount of $10,500 from the general fund to various line items in the animal shelter budget for 2015. Thank you, Judge.
Any more?
Second.
Any more? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Do we have any more discussion? Carly, call the roll, please. Hi, Karen. Do we need public comment?
Yes, you do need to do public comment before the final adoption.
Okay. Do you folks understand we're going to go ahead, the vote now is coming up, the original with 10.5, and the vote will come, but I'm going to ask for public comment from you before we vote on this. Anyone that would like to make a comment, please come forward. 3 minutes.
I might suggest you think of another option, and it seems to me what you're looking at is time more than money. If you appropriate the 20 out of the general fund, and then you go back and exercise Ms. J.P. Madison's cuts, can those cuts be made later with the discussions with those department heads? I don't know what you have to do to get the money back to the general fund in that way, but is that an option?
Thank you. Please identify yourself.
Sure. My name is Del Eldridge. I'm a resident of Washington County, and I've been a volunteer at the shelter since it opened. And I just want to let you know I think it's extremely well run, and I think that people do a great job there. I guess it's been very disappointing to me to watch this tonight with how much bickering over such a small amount of money. And I guess, you know, if you want something to really chew on, I would suggest that you guys look at mandatory spay neuter for Washington County, which would take care of all this frickin' problem. It basically put it back to where the shelter wouldn't be filled with hordes amount of animals. And that's something very easy to do, and you'll get some flack on it, but you'll get a lot of positive comments on it. So I'd rather you spend your time working on that subject than worrying about $30,000.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, folks.
Let's talk about the pets.
Okay, we're ready for any other. Come forward, Ms. Teddy. Please identify yourself.
Have y'all missed me? I'm Teddy Cardwell, and I'm the president of the Animal League of Washington County. I'm also the former chair of the Animal Concerns Advisory Board for Washington County. And I've been involved with the shelter from the beginning, too, because the Animal Concerns Advisory Board helped to plan it and design it and so on and so forth. My understanding is, and I just got here, I had another meeting, I'm sorry. My understanding is that the shelter asked for, can somebody clear me up here? $32,000. Okay. From August of 2012 until February of 2014, the animal shelter received grants and funds from the Animal League of Washington County in the amount of $45,000. I don't know if that's been mentioned tonight.
It has been, yeah.
From that time until now, from March of 2014 till now, the shelter support's only been about $225, not $225,000, $225. So my question is, if we gave that much money until 2014, we would have continued to have given grants and to give money, if asked, from March 1st, 2014 till today. So in March of 2014, we were asked to let the shelter stand on their own feet by Judge Edwards. And that's what we've done. At that point in time, she said she'd call us if she needed us. We said, call us if you need us. Nobody's called us, except that Carmen has done some medical rehab and transport. So I think all this maybe could have been avoided if we'd asked nonprofits to help out here. That's my comments.
Thank you, ma'am.
Call the question.
Are we ready for the vote?
Yes.
Carly?
Sue Madison, Joel Maxwell, Joe Patterson, Butch Pond, Bill Ussery, Daniel Balls, Harvey Bowman, Rick Cochran, Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke, Ann Harbison,
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd,
No.
Tom Lundstrom,
No.
Eva Madison,
10-2. It's 10-2.
So this has now passed. The animal shelter has been appropriated 10-5. And this is, I guess it's all of this discussion. Okay.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Well,
we got?
J.P. Madison has asked for a privilege to take.
To the members of the court, I forgot at last week's meeting, so I was actually really glad this turned out. I need the court to adopt the other J.P. Madison, to be my backup representative to the Association of Quorum Courts, because they scheduled the Association of Counties annual meeting for a different week than normal this year. I'm going to be gone, so she needs to fill in for me, and she's agreed to do that. But I wanted her to actually be official in that a lot of counties do elect an alternate. So if
Want us to make a motion?
yes,
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion?
did you get that? Do you know what we're talking about? Okay, thank you.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Okay, thank you very
she's
much.
official.
Move for adjournment.
That's a good thing.
Pardon?
Public comments
Just let me
again.
get to this to make sure I'm not missing something. Huh?
Public comment again.
Citizens' comments. Please identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Kyle Sylvester, Circuit Clerk for Washington County. I've been speaking with George about the possibilities of utilizing a fund that my office has called the Commissioner Fee Fund to help bolster the funds for the rest of the funding for the animal shelter by removing monies from line items in my general budget, moving it to appropriate it to the animal shelter to finish out the year, and then taking the Commissioner Fee Fund money and putting it back into my general budget. So just so that you all know, we're going to be working on that so that Angela will have her $32,000.
Look behind you.
You're a hero. Kyle, you're a
Judge, I
hero.
think we need to probably cancel the meeting for Monday.
Pardon?
Cancel the meeting for Monday. So just announce
Yes.
that.
We have another meeting scheduled for Monday. We do not need that meeting. I guess we need, Karen, do we need to make a motion to cancel that meeting Monday?
No.
Okay, you don't have to come Monday night. It's canceled. So, okay.
Can I move to adjourn now?
Yes, ma'am.
I move to adjourn, Judge.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Get in a hurry there, lunch.